Edward Cabrera traded over to the Cubs in exchange for 3 prospects, outfielder Owen Casey and infielders Christian Hernandez and Edgardo De Leon. Cabrera turns 28 in April and is under team control for 3 more years. Very interesting pitcher. He's clearly very talented, has an extensive injury history. We didn't see him perform consistently enough until last season when he was very good. 3.53 ERA, 123 whip, nearly 10K per 9. Got those walks down as well. Chris, how much did you move up? I'm assuming you did move up Edward Cabrera in your rankings with this trade over to the Cubs.
Not that much. It's clearly a better situation. The Cubs have arguably the best defense in baseball, probably the best infield defense as well. They give him a better chance of getting wins. All of that is true. And so it is a better situation. It's also Edward Cabrera. And his biggest obstacle has always been himself. And so I just don't think this fundamentally changes.
I'm relieved to hear you say that.
Sidebar on this one. It's Edward Cabrera. Why did Edward Cabrera suddenly become this big trade chip that people thought was people were like, well, that's a disappointing return. It's for Edward Cabrera, I
thought it was a great return.
Yeah. It's not a great,
famous Charizard, Edward Cabrera.
Yeah. I have questions about Owen Casey. I think there are reasonable concerns about the fact that this guy got to AAA pretty early on in 2024. And the Cubs just gave him no chance in basically a year and a half. I think there are reasons to believe that the Cubs just don't have a lot of faith in Owen Casey. And look, the Cubs know Owen Casey better than anyone. So, I think that should factor into your view of Owen Casey moving forward. But it's also Edward Cabrera. I don't think this was a guy who had a ton of value. There are reports that the Yankees were interested but scared off by the medicals. I think it's fine for both sides. I think the Cubs got a talented, cheap pitcher, and that the cheap part is very important to the Cubs at this point. But he's got to throw strikes. He's got to stay healthy. I don't have a lot of faith in him to do either of those things. So yeah, the defense helps. Yeah, the ballpark helps. Yeah, the team that's backing him up helps. It should be probably not a 90-win team, but probably an 85-plus win team, I would say, for the Cubs. But the primary issue for Edward Cabrera is Edward Cabrera. And going to the Cubs probably doesn't fix that. I can't say for sure. Maybe they have some tweaks to his delivery, but this is a guy who went on the IL in September with a sprained elbow and has been on the IL 9 times in his major league career.
9 times.
9 times. So I didn't really move him up.
Yeah, I am valid. I feel validated hearing you say this because I had the same reaction to what is all the fuss over Edward Cabrera? And I tweeted something about it. It got a big reaction, both in terms of likes and responses. And I saw some headlines saying Cubs acquire frontline pitcher Edward Cabrera. And I'm like, in what world is Edward Cabrera a frontline pitcher? I realize he just had the best season of his career. It was a breakout in some ways, and we could get into the changes that went behind it. I think that's, at least for baseball dorks like us, listening to fantasy baseball podcasts in early January, it's pretty well documented. He started throwing a sinker more, that 4-seamer that he had trouble controlling. He
lowered his arm slot.
Lowered the arm slot, which helped the secondary stuff play out, which was already pretty good. So there were changes he made that allowed him to have a breakout season. And yet he broke out to a 3.53 ERA and a 1.23 whip, which is pretty good. Good. I can use that, but not even borderline ace material. And then, probably, nearly 10K per 9, guy who's capable of missing bats. We've always known that about Edward Cabrera. But he threw, you mentioned the 9 IL stints in his career. the 137 and 2/3 innings he just threw was a career high across 5 seasons, some of them up and down between the majors and minors, granted, but 90 career starts, basically. 90 career, I'm rounding up, but 90 career starts for Edward Cabrera. And the most innings he hasn't even gotten to 140. So it's almost like a Tyler Glasnow health record here, but without the success record of a Tyler Glasnow. Really just one season, this most recent season, where he was good but not great. So are the changes that he made last year going to stick, first of all? Because he could backslide. Like, the arm slat could change again. Like, the sinker, maybe he'll struggle to control that now. It's not like he has a long history of doing the things he did right last year. It's not like he has a history of doing that over and over again, and that makes it, you question how likely it is to continue, or at least it should. And then, how many innings can you honestly expect from him? Every pitcher is injury prone, and so I don't like to think of a pitcher as safe in terms of innings. But when the injury history is as extensive as it is for Edward Cabrera, I think you have to count it against him. So for me, he's 59th. I think it was like 64th among starting pitchers prior to the trade. He is oriented more for ground balls. It's a great infield defense in Chicago, not to mention probably a more competitive team. It is an upgrade. But I just think the commentary surrounding this trade it runs the risk of inflating Edward Cabrera's draft status beyond what's reasonable. He should be a usable part of your fantasy rotation all season long. That is my expectation for him. But there are both performance and durability questions, major ones.
I kind of view him as like a less projectable Gavin Williams. Like Gavin Williams, except I'm even more concerned about how sustainable the success is and how likely he is to throw any kind of impactful number of innings.
I have him right next to Mackenzie Gore. I feel like those guys are really similar, right? It's just
I think Mackenzie Gore. I think Mackenzie Gore is significantly more talented, actually. I actually like, if Mackenzie Gore was a top 20 starting pitcher, I would be surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked. I would be shocked if Edward Cabrera got there.
I don't know, man. We had a stretch in the middle of the season when Cabrera was healthy and when he was really going. It was like a 10, 12 start stretch where he was just churning out quality start after quality start. And he kind of was in that, top 40, top 36 starting pitcher conversation.
But we had that with Gore, too.
I think
he was higher.
We moved Gore into top 20 discussion. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, Gore very typically has had these huge fall offs. And look, they both have their flaws. I totally get that. Don't disagree with a word that you guys said. I do think I have a little bit more faith in the Cubs kind of getting the best out of Cabrera. And again, just that defense behind him. He gets a lot of ground balls when balls are put in play against him. And having one of maybe the best defense in baseball behind you, obviously, can only help Edward Cabrera. So I do like that aspect of it for him quite a bit. The updated Cubs rotation: Matthew Boyd, Shota Imanaga, Cade Horton, Edward Cabrera, Jameson Taillon, and Justin Steele returning at some point this season. The NFBC ADP over the past 2 weeks for Cabrera is right at 200. It's a fun range of pitchers. He's right around Shane Baz and Mackenzie Gore, who I just mentioned, and Chris Bubich. Would you take Cabrera over any of those names? Baz, Gore, Bubich?
I'd take him over Baz and Gore, but we've talked before about how Chris Bubich by early ADP seems criminally underrated. So I don't think he belongs in that same conversation. Bubich, Cabrera. I was with you, actually, Frank. I had Cabrera and Gore back to back prior to the trade. And so now I've got a little separation between the two of them with Cabrera's circumstances improving.
Yeah.
But
I've got Gore ahead.
Okay.
I think Baz and Cabrera are very close for me. Let me see. Cabrera's a little ahead of Baz, it looks like.
I have Cabrera 202, so I think I'm right with ADP there.
For the Cubs, before we move on to the Marlins side of things, with Owen Casey gone, it does seem like Moises Basteros will get a pretty fair chance to be at least a strong side platoon at DH this season. Unfortunately, doesn't have catcher eligibility. I would say maybe he can work his way into getting that, but the Cubs
did-
already have a bunch
He made
of
one
other
appearance.
tackles they
He
like.
did make one appearance.
Yeah.
So that gives me some hope that they're not totally abandoning him as a catcher. I don't think he'll ever be the catcher for the Cubs, but could he be a bat first backup while playing a lot of DH? I think that's possible for Basteros.
I think you need an injury.
Yeah, but he is util only just to start the season, so keep that in mind. But he's a prospect that can hit and maybe, decent power there. So definitely a name to watch in spring training. Definitely a name, I think, for deeper leagues to know. Moises Basteros.
I moved him up. And I wanted to follow up on Owen Casey too, because we could look at it a couple ways. The Cubs were willing to part with him to get Edward Cabrera. But my understanding from what I've read is the Marlins have coveted Owen Casey for a while. And
they had agreed to a trade last offseason for Jesus Luzardo, centered around Owen Casey, that the Cubs backed out of because of medicals.
Yeah. And, obviously the Cubs were in the playoff race, and I'm sure the Marlins, if they got the right return, would have made a deal at the deadline. Mm-hmm. And so it seems like the Cubs resisted moving Casey until now. So the Marlins coveted Casey, and the Marlins have had a good record of acquiring hitters, like overflow hitters from other organizations recently, with Kyle Stowers being the most prominent example.
Marcy.
So I'm pretty bullish on Casey, and I think he's going to be a prime target for me in 5 outfielder leagues. I would imagine he'll have the inside track on a starting job this spring. I think there's huge power there. There are some strikeout concerns, but it's not like he was Spencer Jones striking out 35% of the time at AAA. It was like 28%. And when you dig deeper on the plate discipline numbers, the chase wasn't too bad.
Yep, the constituent parts are pretty strong.
Wasn't that bad. So I think we saw him actualize the power this past year. Owen Casey, good plate discipline. I have high hopes for him.
Yeah, I think when I think of like a comp for him, one that came to mind was Taylor Ward. Kind of that 3 true outcomes guy, not going to steal bases, but you can live with a lower batting average if he gets to that 30+ homer territory. And I do think Owen Casey has that skill set, 92 mile per hour average exit velocity, 113 max. His skill set actually looks a lot like Kyle Stowers, which, Frank, I see you put in the notes. I've seen a lot of people.
What I thought,
and I think Peter Bendix, actually, I saw a quote from Peter Bendix where he basically said the same thing. And so he's going to get the chance. I don't think he's necessarily a superstar, but Owen Casey, the only thing is there are actually quite a few. I'm working on sleepers. We're going to do sleepers, breakouts, and busts 1.0 next week, and I'm sleepers on Monday. And there's a lot of outfielders in like the 250+ range of ADP who are young. Like that seems to be where we're sticking, like Cam Smith and Chase DeLauder and Justin Crawford. A lot of guys that I like a lot, but I do think Carson Benj is in like the 350, 400 range. So I think Owen Casey's definitely in that mix. And I would say in 12-team Roto League should probably be drafted as a bench piece.
I like Casey more than all those guys, with the exception of maybe Carson Benj. Like I like Benj more as a prospect, but I also think Benj is the least likely of those to have a job out of spring training.
If you look at
I think he's like almost guaranteed. Actually, I mean, we got to see what the rest of the Mets offseason looks like, but
they like him a lot.
There's 2 spots for him.
Yeah. NFBC Draft Champions ADP over the past 2 weeks, Owen Casey was 454, outfielder 109 before this trade. Obviously, he's going to climb up quite a bit. I put here, I could see him getting up into like that 300 to 325 range, which puts him right around guys like Dylan Beavers, Chase DeLauder, names you mentioned, Chris, as other young outfielders that were high-end prospects and have a decent opportunity this upcoming season as well. For the rest of the Marlins side of this trade, Cabrera gone. This opens up a spot in their rotation. So Roster Resource put Max Meyer in there. He's returning from hip surgery. He had that in July. It requires 6 to 8 months to recover. So it's close whether or not he's going to be ready and, whether or not he'll actually pitch well enough in spring training to earn that opportunity. But, man, if one of the prospects gets a chance here, Robby Snelling or Thomas White, and I only bring that up because we have team previews coming out next week. More on that a little bit later on. These short team previews. I interviewed Craig Mish, who's a Miami Marlins insider. He brought up Thomas White and said the Marlins brass has not shot down the possibility of Thomas White being in the rotation on opening day. So just wanted to mention that.
And he's a monster. Like, Thomas White is really, really exciting. If he can be... If he can have just decent control, I think he's going to be a really, really good pitcher at the major league level. He had a 39% strikeout rate as a 20-year-old last season and got to AAA. Only made 2 starts at AAA, struggled with his control, but despite walking a lot of guys, he had a 25% K- walk ratio. So I think it would be kind of silly to skip over Robby Snelling, who is another guy who got to AAA, I think, in 2024.
He made
1 start at AAA in 2024 and then got there last year.
And what were his numbers at AAA last year?
Ridiculous. 1.27 ERA.
Robby Snelling.
He was so good.
Yeah, and we were talking. Snelling. I know throughout September I was talking like, oh, every time a change happened in the Marlins rotation, I was like, this is Robby Snelling's ticket, and it never happened. But like he should have a spot in this rotation coming out of spring training, because there's clearly nothing more for him to accomplish at AAA. I do think Thomas White is the better prospect. Thomas White is my top ranked pitching prospect who hasn't debuted yet. There are 3 big ones ahead of him who have, but like White is really good. I just think Robby Snelling is more of a finished product, and he's really good himself. And I think he definitely deserves to be a sleeper now that Edward Cabrera is removed. And, I'm speaking glowingly here of Owen Casey and Robby Snelling. And of course, the Marlins had some interesting pieces carrying over from last year too. A lot has to go right, but I could see them competing this past year. I could see
the Marlins weren't eliminated last year until the final weekend of the season. Just want to point that out.
I think they also had like a minus 80 run differential.
You had a minus 80 run differential.
Thinking ahead to the bold predictions episode we'll do right before the season, I'm sure. Like I'm already kind of, and bold predictions. We say things that are meant to sound kind of nutty and don't believe to our core, but it's within the realm of possibility. I'm kind of floating the idea of the Marlins make the playoffs and the Cubs don't.
Ooh, yeah, that would be pretty spicy. Just want to wrap this up. I agree what you guys have said about both of these pitching prospects here. I am really excited about Robby Snelling. I think he will get the first opportunity here. You mentioned, Scott, he's a much more finished product than Thomas White. He went 6+ innings in 14 of 25 starts in the minors last year. That's not normal.
That's rare
for pitching prospects to do. So he kind of has like this big frame, and they trust him in terms of his workload and throwing innings. So I am in. He gets ground balls, interesting lefty. He's got good stuff. Like I am very excited about Robby Snelling getting an opportunity, potentially heading into opening day, being in that Marlins rotation.